Okay, hello everyone. I am a third-year graduate student working at the University of Central Florida. I would just like to acknowledge my advisor, Dr. Carrie Donaldson-Hanna, Dr. Melissa Martineau, and Dr. Benjamin Greenhagen for helping me to really nail down the methodology and to test the limits of these remote sensing products that we've been using to try and understand what are the compositions of irregular Mare patches. So short and sweet, the key takeaways from our study: we analyzed 12 irregular Mare patches on the near side and found that many of these IMPS are compositionally distinct from their surroundings. That was supported by M-cube, Diviner, Kaguya, and WAC-derived titanium abundances. Our second key takeaway was that we found that IMPS are the most compatible with Apollo 17 and Apollo 11 high titanium Mare basalts. And in terms of putting that into the context of how these features might have formed, we find that the compositional trends that we qualified in our analysis could be consistent with several of the previously hypothesized IMP formation mechanisms. So I do feel grateful for being able to follow Dr. Anderson's talk from today. I won't beat you over the head with the same information, but IMPS generally show these two interesting morphologies. They have smooth mounds that are located at higher elevations, mixed in with these brighter floor units that are saturated with blocky textures. They can be found in a wide variety of geologic contexts. The most common one is within typical host Mare settings and Mare plains. And perhaps the most interesting factoid about them is that their crater counting statistics could potentially indicate young emplacements, perhaps less than 100 million years old. And we believe that understanding their formation, the composition, their ages, all of these things can help us to place constraints on the evolution of basaltic materials through time. So here I've just summarized, Dr. Anderson did not really go into some of the other formation mechanisms, but I've listed 5 of the most previous ones that have been hypothesized to form IMPS in this table here. The ones outlined in green, we believe those are kind of more easily testable in a compositional analysis space. The one listed in orange, the lava flow inflation, that might be a little bit more challenging to test based on this analysis because that might rely on understanding more about their physical or geological characteristics. And the most recent hypotheses about lava lake processes and magmatic foam extrusions, that might not be as easily testable based on this analysis due to the unknown mineralogies of typical magmatic foams. So our research objective, one of the main outstanding questions about IMPS is, do they exhibit a compositionally unique signature compared to their surrounding terrains? So we conducted comparisons of the compositions of IMPS. We compared that with their surrounding host Mare regions and regolith at varying distances. And we also looked at other geologic regions of interest, such as craters of high and low albedo. And some IMPS are also surrounded by a halo of dark halo material. So we also extracted compositional information to conduct comparisons with these units as well. So in terms of our methodology, we're leveraging now 5 different data sets to try and understand the compositions. The first step in the process is we wanted to look at the moon mineralogy map or spectra. And we also wanted to, when conducting comparisons, we wanted to make sure that the regions that we were looking at were compositionally homogeneous. So I was toggling back and forth between NAC and WAC, FEO and TiO2 data products. And I wanted to see if we could find units that exhibited very low variation in iron and titanium for the purposes of conducting our spectral and compositional comparisons. We then ran the M-cube spectra through a continuum removal code. We modified that after a previous study in 2016. And we computed some specific spectral parameters, such as the absorption band center, in order to understand what the compositions or mineralogies of these features are. And the main challenge in this analysis is that all of these data sets have different spatial resolutions. So we utilized and leveraged ArcGIS, and we're importing the ROIs that we extracted with Moon Mineralogy Mapper in order to make sure that the statistics that we were gathering from all of the other instruments are coming from the same location approximately on the lunar surface. And then finally, once we had all of the data, we then compared the IMPS M-cube spectra to those in the Relab spectral database, which has thousands and thousands and thousands of samples. We also compared the diviner iron and titanium statistics to Mare basalts. And then finally, we just sort of stepped out and zoomed out from the analysis and said, okay, what are the main compositional trends? And how can we qualify what formation mechanisms are the most likely based on these observations? So I'll show you the example that Dr. Anderson talked about where the mission is going. This is the INA irregular Mare patch outlined in the blue and green squares. As you can see, for the past 2 years, basically, I think my eye prescription has been getting stronger and stronger because I have to zoom into scales at however close to the screen I can get. So we essentially were extracting regions within the IMPS, and then we were looking at the surrounding regolith in red and orange and lighter orange. So we looked at regolith at varying distances. We also extracted spectra in purple for the dark halo region surrounding INA, and then there's also a dark halo crater located to the west of INA that's outlined in the light purple squares. And in general, we developed 2 classes of IMPS, and the largest class is class 1, IMPS that are spectrally distinct from their surroundings. The absorption band positions on the figure on the left show you that, that there's difference in absorption band centers and absorption band depths with the IMP regions compared to the surrounding regolith units and craters of varying albedos. So this was the first class of IMPS that we had identified in our analysis. As I mentioned before, we then imported our M-cubed RIs into ArcGIS, and we got the diviner statistics as well. You'll notice that in the previous slide, I was averaging all of these units together because extracting 500 units with 500 different spectra would become burdensome and potentially not able to be interpreted very well. So in all the other data sets, I'm just using each box represents an individual statistic or data point on the rest of these plots. And the diviner data suggested to us much of the same thing, that the IMP units in general exhibited CF positions, and other talks have represented that the CF positions are indicative of the mineralogy of the surface. But the IMP interior positions, the CF positions, are at shorter wavelengths than the surrounding regolith and the surrounding craters in the geologic scene. And finally, leveraging the Kaguya multiband imager iron abundance and WAC-derived titanium statistics for these IMP deposits, we also saw sort of much of the same story, that the IMP interior units in green and blue were plotting in a relatively different parameter space than the surrounding regolith and craters of variable albedos. So all of these data sets were essentially pointing us in one direction, saying that IMPS might be compositionally unique when compared with their surroundings. And I'll just show in my last slide here, it's kind of hammering home the point that when we plotted the titanium and iron statistics for the IMPS outlined in the colorful circles, they're the most compatible with the cyan and square and triangle for the Apollo 11 and Apollo 17 Mare basalts. And the figure on the right shows we conducted hundreds of spectral comparisons with those in the Relab spectral database. And I showed 3 spectra of IMPS on the top, and the 6 spectra on the bottom are Apollo 17 Mare basalts of various particle size fractions. And these we found were the closest approximation to the IMP spectra in general, that was the Apollo 11 and 17 Mare basalt spectra. So in conclusion, that the major interpretations and summary of our analysis, the M-cubed, diviner, Kaguya, and WAC statistics all suggested to us that IMPS might be compositionally distinct from their surroundings. And in particular, looking at the iron and titanium statistics, as well as the Relab spectral comparisons, these materials are likely similar to Mare basaltic materials. And in terms of zooming out and placing that into the context of how these features might have formed, while we cannot really disentangle which of the hypotheses would be the most likely, we can say with some reasonable degree of certainty that several hypotheses, such as regolith removal with episodic outgassing, small basaltic eruptions, and/or pyroclastic eruptions could have led to the formation of these deposits. Thank you.